Selfies seem harmless, and billions are taken every day, shared across social media without a second thought. But behind the filters and the likes lie stories that should never have happened. In this video, we're uncovering 6 of the dumbest selfie deaths ever, all avoidable with just a moment of common sense. It was July 14th, 2017. The afternoon sun beat down on a makeshift bull ring in a small Andalusian town where locals gathered for their annual summer fiesta. Leo Barron, an 18-year-old exchange student from California, stood at the wooden barrier with a bottle of cheap local wine in one hand and his phone in the other, watching younger bulls charge through the ring as teenagers taunted them from safe distances. Leo had arrived in Spain 3 months earlier through a cultural exchange program sponsored by a West Coast educational foundation. He wasn't an athlete or daredevil by nature, just a college freshman who posts occasional social media content. Friends back home described him as attention-seeking, but harmless, always chasing the next viral moment without considering consequences. The fiesta represented perfect content material, colorful and chaotic. Spanish bull runs involve young bulls, typically 2 to 3 years old. Unlike professional bullfighting, these events use less aggressive bulls and less likely result in serious injuries. However, the animals are still powerful, unpredictable, and equipped with sharp horns capable of inflicting devastating damage. The churned sand floor becomes uneven and treacherous as the event progresses. That afternoon, Leo had been drinking for approximately 3 hours with his exchange program peers. His blood alcohol content was later estimated at 0.12%, well above the legal limit. Around 4:15 in the afternoon, he announced his intention to jump into the ring for a selfie video. His friends laughed and encouraged him, none fully appreciating the danger. Local organizers had posted signs in Spanish and broken English warning that entering the ring was at one's own risk, but these were largely ignored by the rowdy crowd. Leo climbed over the wooden barrier, phone extended in selfie mode, and jogged toward the center of the ring. A young brown bull had just charged past another participant and was circling back. Leo positioned himself directly in the animal's path, grinning at his camera and running backward to capture himself outrunning the bull. The crowd of around 100 spectators began shouting warnings in Spanish that Leo either didn't understand or chose to ignore. In seconds, Leo's left foot caught in a depression in the churned sand. He fell backward hard, phone still extended upward. The footage later recovered from his device partially showed his face, followed by a violent blur of motion as the bull closed the distance. The collision was devastating. The bull's horn drove upward into Leo's lower jaw and neck area with blunt force and penetration, snapping his head backward and throwing his body sideways. He was flung several feet across the ring, landing motionless in the sand as blood pooled rapidly around his head. The phone, still recording, showed only sky and the panicked movements of spectators rushing toward the barrier. 2 local paramedics stationed at the event reached Leo within 90 seconds. They immediately recognized fatal injuries, but attempted resuscitation protocols. An ambulance arrived within 8 minutes, but Leo showed no vital signs. He was pronounced dead at the scene at 4:33 in the afternoon. The medical examiner's report documented catastrophic cervical trauma, massive vascular injury to the neck, and severe neurological damage consistent with a high-energy horn strike. Death occurred within moments due to rapid blood loss and irreversible trauma, leaving no opportunity for recovery. The regional government banned all spectator participation in bull runs within the municipality within 2 months. The recovered phone became part of the official investigation. Authorities secured the footage. Friends were questioned extensively, though none could fully explain why Leo had ignored repeated warnings. It was August 9th, 2017. The hydroelectric spillway in Karnataka, India, roared with monsoon overflow, concrete platforms slick with perpetual mist. Ravi Kolan, a 21-year-old engineering student, stood with 4 classmates near the safety fence, drawn by the raw power of thousands of gallons cascading below. What began as a celebratory field trip would end with rescue divers searching turbulent waters. Ravi was a third-year civil engineering student at a regional technical university, known for his outgoing personality and constant social media presence. He maintained an active account documenting his life. His professors described him as intelligent but impulsive, someone who understood concepts academically but lacked practical judgment. He'd grown up middle class in Bangalore, the first in his family pursuing higher education. The Spillway visit was organized by a local infrastructure company hosting student tours during monsoon season, when the facility operated at elevated flow levels. Hydroelectric spillways manage excess water through massive concrete channels, releasing overflow at controlled rates to prevent dam failure. During monsoon, water volumes increase several times above dry season averages, creating violent turbulence where discharge enters the engineered plunge pool designed to dissipate energy. That afternoon, the tour group received extensive safety briefings. Multiple signs in 3 languages warned visitors to remain behind barriers. The spillway operated at approximately 85% of rated flow, with water moving at roughly 35 feet per second through discharge channels. The company representative specifically emphasized the platform's wet surface became extremely slippery near the edge. Minutes later, while the group photographed from behind the safety fence, Ravi decided he needed a better angle. His friends later told investigators he wanted a selfie, showing the water flow's scale behind him. He climbed over the waist-high steel fence, ignoring classmates' protests and warning signs mounted directly along the barrier line. The concrete beneath was saturated with mist, essentially a smooth, wet surface, offering almost no traction. Ravi positioned himself about 8 feet from the spillway lip, holding his phone at arm's length in front-facing mode. Security cameras captured him adjusting his stance, taking small backward steps to fit more spillway into frame. Suddenly, his left foot slipped first. The phone's camera recorded his expression, changing from confident smile to sudden panic as his sneaker lost grip instantly. He tried catching himself, but his momentum was already committed. He slid backward, arms flailing, moving faster than he could react. Within 2 seconds, he reached the edge and disappeared over the discharge channel lip into the stilling basin below. Security footage showed Ravi entering violent hydraulic turbulence, where aerated water obscured visibility almost immediately. The churning white water swallowed him within seconds. One classmate called emergency services at 3:17 in the afternoon, but the facility's rescue team was already mobilizing, having witnessed the fall on monitors. Divers reached the impact zone within minutes, but faced dangerous, unstable currents. Turbulence and poor visibility made searching extremely hazardous. They recovered Ravi's body 2 hours later, approximately 200 feet downstream, pinned against a submerged debris rack near the outflow channel. The medical examiner determined Ravi died from severe blunt force trauma combined with drowning. His injuries indicated repeated impacts caused by high-energy water forces and violent tumbling through turbulent zones. The infrastructure company installed taller fixed barriers, restricted tour access during high discharge conditions, and hired full-time safety monitors during monsoon season. The phone and its recordings became part of the official investigation files, stored securely and referenced in subsequent safety trainings. It was May 2nd, 2014. Prague's Old Town Square bustled with afternoon tourists, cobblestones worn smooth by centuries of footfall. Elena Ambros, a 23-year-old language student from Slovenia, stood before the medieval wishing well with her phone raised, determined to capture content more dramatic than the typical tourist snapshots. Elena was completing her second semester at a language institute in Prague, studying Czech and German while documenting nearly every outing online. Her sisters described her as charming but attention-seeking, someone who relied heavily on online validation. She had grown up in Ljubljana, the youngest of 3 siblings. The medieval wishing well rose roughly 4 feet above the surrounding pavement, with a stone rim measuring approximately 8 inches across and a vertical shaft descending about 22 feet to a shallow pool below. The structure featured decorative limestone blocks, worn smooth by weather and constant contact. A small, multilingual warning sign indicated unstable edges and restricted access, though no physical barriers prevented climbing. The interior walls were damp limestone, offering virtually no handholds, with less than 2 feet of standing water at the bottom. That afternoon, Elena watched tourists tossing coins from the pavement, filming standard shots. She complained audibly to her roommate via video call that everyone's photos looked boring and unoriginal. She announced her plan to lean over the well so her roommate could see the depth and coins below, creating what she called perspective. Her roommate urged caution, but Elena dismissed the concerns, insisting she had good balance and control. Elena stepped onto the rounded stone rim instead of remaining on the pavement. The worn surface offered very limited traction, especially under her flat canvas shoes. She extended her arm downward, holding the phone in selfie mode to capture both her face and the well's interior simultaneously. Passers-by noticed her precarious position, several slowing or pointing, but no staff or security personnel were nearby to intervene. Elena balanced briefly on one foot, leaning further forward to improve the angle. Her selfie video recorded her laughing nervously, saying she was not actually going to fall and that she had perfect balance. She shifted her weight again to get closer to the opening, her torso now angled nearly halfway over the shaft. Immediately, her supporting foot slipped. The phone's camera jolted violently as her center of gravity moved past recovery. Witnesses said she tried grabbing the rim, but the smooth, rounded stone offered no grip. The selfie footage captured her sudden inversion, the image spinning as she fell. She dropped into the well shaft, striking the bottom after a 22-foot vertical fall, the impact producing a loud echo audible in the square. Square security cameras recorded her hands briefly appearing at the rim, scraping against the stone before sliding away. She remained alive but critically injured, producing splashing and muffled sounds from below. The impact caused a severe pelvic fracture, rendering her partially paralyzed and unable to lift herself. According to tourists nearby, they assumed the noises were part of a prank or performance and did not immediately investigate. One bystander finally looked down and called emergency services. Fire rescue arrived within 8 minutes, but extraction required rope systems and confined space equipment. Rescuers reached Elena approximately within 20 minutes after the call. She had already drowned in less than 2 feet of water, unable to stand, climb, or keep her airway clear due to her injuries. The medical examiner determined Elena suffered multiple rib fractures, spinal trauma, and severe internal injuries caused by the fall. Incapacitated by pain, neurological damage, and partial paralysis from her pelvic fracture, she was unable to maintain an upright position, repeatedly slipping beneath the water's surface. Death occurred within approximately 15 minutes of the fall. Prague authorities permanently sealed the well with a fixed steel grate anchored into the stone following the incident. Authorities secured the device as evidence for the investigation, and none of the footage was released publicly. The Language Institute implemented mandatory safety orientations for international students, specifically addressing risk-taking behavior. It was November 22, 2016. The outdoor stadium in São Paulo, Brazil, vibrated with 15,000 metal fans pressed against temporary barriers as the headlining band prepared their final set. Mateus Rocha, a 19-year-old apprentice electrician, pushed through the dense crowd toward the front stage barrier, phone already recording, determined to capture footage closer than anyone else. Mateus worked at a commercial electrical contractor in São Paulo's industrial district, installing wiring for warehouse facilities. His co-workers described him as energetic but immature, someone who constantly documented mundane moments. According to them, he was not particularly passionate about metal music, but attended concerts specifically to film crowd footage. He'd saved 2 weeks' wages for the ticket, arriving alone after his shift ended late. Stadium general admission concerts create density problems when crowds surge toward stages. The venue had installed temporary metal barriers 3 feet from the stage edge, designed to prevent fans from climbing up while allowing security to extract anyone in distress. During peak songs, crowd momentum pushes everyone forward simultaneously, compressing bodies against barriers with tremendous force. Standard safety protocol requires maintaining space and keeping hands free to brace against surges. That evening, Mateus arrived 40 minutes late due to work running over. The pit was already dangerously overcrowded, clearly exceeding the venue's stated capacity. Security staff at the entrance specifically warned latecomers about dangerous conditions and suggested staying in back sections. Despite warnings, Mateus was allowed into the pit because his ticket was valid and staff could not refuse entry. Multiple witnesses noted that he immediately forced his way forward through hundreds of packed bodies, elbowing and squeezing toward the barrier, ignoring the advice. He reached the front row just as the band launched their most popular song. People around him were compressed, shoulder to shoulder, unable to move independently. Friends he'd met earlier in the crowd shouted that he looked crushed, urging him to step back. Mateus waved them off, announcing he was getting the perfect shot. He held his phone at eye level and turned his back to the stage. The chorus dropped. Thousands of fans surged forward simultaneously in a predictable wave of momentum. With no hands free and his weight already committed forward, Mateus was slammed chest first into the metal barrier. The crowd's collective mass pinned him there, his ribcage compressed between the barrier edge and hundreds of pounds of pressure from behind. He did not fall. He remained upright, held vertical by the crushing force. His phone slumped on his lanyard, continued recording his face partially as he struggled to breathe. Crowd footage from nearby fans shows people jumping and singing inches away, completely unaware. Mateus went limp, but stayed standing, supported entirely by compression. Some fans shouted, but most were too focused on the music to notice the compression building. Several minutes passed before adjacent concertgoers noticed his unresponsiveness. Someone finally alerted security at 9:32 in the evening. Extracting him required 6 security personnel, pushing backward against the crowd. Paramedics reached him 4 minutes later and immediately began resuscitation, but he showed no response. The medical examiner determined Mateus died from mechanical asphyxiation caused by sustained chest compression that prevented breathing. He had no fatal internal injuries, broken bones, or bleeding. Death occurred because continuous pressure made lung expansion physically impossible, causing rapid oxygen deprivation. The venue implemented reduced front row capacity limits and installed rigid crowd control barriers with designated extraction points. Copies of Mateus's footage were stored securely with São Paulo authorities and referenced in venue safety audits. It was March 3, 2018. The evening air hung heavy over Bangkok's Sukhumvit district as the sun dipped below the skyline. On the 45th floor of a luxury condominium tower, Krit Suthan prepared what would become his final social media post. The narrow concrete railing outside his parents' penthouse had become his personal stage, and tonight he was determined to outdo every previous photograph. Krit was 19 years old, the only son of a real estate developer who spent most of his time traveling for business. His feed showed a progression of increasingly dangerous balcony photographs. Standing poses became one-legged balances, which evolved into handstands against the glass barrier, and eventually full handstands on the railing itself. The building management had issued warnings to his family twice about his balcony activities, but his friends said Krit dismissed them as overreactions from old people who didn't understand social media. The penthouse railing was 6 inches wide with a slightly curved surface, designed for aesthetics rather than stability. The concrete had been polished smooth during construction, offering minimal grip. Beyond the railing was a 450-foot drop to the busy street below, where evening traffic moved constantly. That evening, Krit had been drinking with 3 friends at a rooftop bar. Around 8:30 in the evening, he announced his plan to perform a handstand on the railing for a timed burst mode photograph. One friend warned that the railing looked dusty and the curved surface was dangerous, but Krit laughed it off. He'd done handstands there before, he insisted, and the height no longer scared him. Back at the penthouse, Krit moved furniture away from the balcony door to clear space. He set his phone against a potted plant, angling it to capture both him and the Bangkok skyline. The plant was slightly unstable, risking the phone tipping if it shifted. He activated burst mode for continuous shooting, refusing his friend's offer to hold the phone because he wanted the shot to look spontaneous. His blood alcohol level was later estimated at 0.09%, enough to impair balance and judgment, but not enough to make him visibly drunk. At 9:15 in the evening, Crit climbed onto the railing. He positioned his hands on the smooth concrete and kicked his legs upward. For approximately 3 seconds, he maintained the handstand position while his phone captured the sequence. His body lurched backward as he instinctively tried to kick himself forward rather than dropping immediately to safety. The motion shifted his center of gravity beyond the recovery point. His hands scrabbled for purchase on the curved railing, but found nothing. He disappeared over the edge in less than 2 seconds. Street-level CCTV captured Crit's body, striking the roof of a moving sedan before hitting the pavement. The impact killed him instantly. His friends inside the apartment watched in horror, unable to reach him in time. One friend called emergency services and paramedics arrived immediately, but could only confirm death at the scene. The medical examiner's report documented catastrophic head trauma, multiple skull fractures, and severe chest injuries consistent with terminal velocity impact. Every major organ had been damaged by deceleration forces. No injury was survivable given the fall distance. Building management immediately installed higher railings across all balconies and banned stunts near edges. Authorities recovered the burst mode images from Crit's phone, but refused any public release. It was September 11th, 2016. The afternoon heat shimmered across the gravel perimeter road of a private game reserve in South Africa's Eastern Cape province. Daniel Cross, a 34-year-old office clerk from Johannesburg, spotted a white rhinoceros and her calf grazing about 130 feet from the roadside. He pulled his rental sedan to a stop, grabbed his phone, and opened the door. Daniel worked in accounts payable for a mid-sized logistics firm, a job his colleagues said he found suffocating and meaningless. His escape was wildlife photography, specifically selfies with dangerous animals that he posted to his Facebook friends. He'd spent 3 years visiting game reserves on weekends, gradually pushing closer to animals for more dramatic shots. His page featured him near elephants, buffalo, and once a leopard in a tree. Game reserves operate under strict protocols designed to prevent exactly what Daniel was attempting. Visitors must remain in vehicles at all times on unfenced roads where megafauna roam freely. White rhinoceroses are deceptively dangerous despite their grass-eating habits. Adult females with calves are particularly aggressive, capable of charging at speeds exceeding 30 miles per hour. Their horn, made of compressed keratin, becomes a 20-inch battering ram backed by 4,000 pounds of muscle. Warning signs were posted every mile along the road Daniel was traveling. That afternoon, Daniel had posted earlier selfies with zebras and wildebeest, but they hadn't received much engagement. According to a colleague he called that morning and texted shortly before leaving the car, saying that the rhino represented an opportunity for something more impressive. He left his engine running and walked toward the animals with his phone extended. His dash cam recorded the mother rhino raising her head immediately, watching him approach. Daniel continued moving closer, adjusting his angle to fit both rhinos into the frame behind his face. At approximately 100 feet away, the calf moved behind its mother. The calf's presence clearly triggered the female's defensive posture. The female turned broadside, a clear defensive posture that Daniel either failed to recognize or ignored. He kept walking, now holding the phone at arm's length, likely focused on the screen rather than the animal. At 50 feet, Daniel stopped and smiled at his phone camera. He took 3 photographs before stepping roughly 16 feet closer. The rhino's ears pivoted forward, her head lowered slightly, and her tail went rigid. Daniel raised his phone higher. The dash cam captured the approaching tour vehicle and the faint warning horn in the distance. The charge happened without additional warning. The rhino accelerated from standstill to full speed in less than 3 seconds. The dash cam footage showed the rhino's horn striking Daniel's chest dead center, lifting him off his feet and throwing him backward. She trampled him twice before returning to her calf. Daniel's body lay motionless in the dirt. A tour vehicle, approaching from the opposite direction, witnessed the aftermath and radioed reserve headquarters. Rangers arrived within minutes, but Daniel had already bled out from catastrophic internal injuries. The medical examiner documented a crushed sternum, ruptured heart, and punctured lungs, consistent with blunt force horn impact. Massive hemorrhaging into the chest cavity had caused death within 30 seconds. No intervention could have saved him, given the severity of trauma. The reserve closed the perimeter road for 3 days while reviewing safety protocols. Neither the images nor the video were released publicly. They were used solely to reconstruct the incident, review reserve safety measures, and provide evidence in the post-mortem report. Thanks for watching. If you like these stories, click here